Good afternoon. I think we all set and ready to start our forum. My name is Tabidi Boone, and on behalf of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity, we just want to welcome you all again to our annual Congressional Black Caucus Fatherhood Forum. So if you don't mind, just please applaud my brothers in my fraternity for taking the leadership for every year to make sure that in support of our former, who I still believe is still our president, President Obama, to partner with him and his administration on the importance of fatherhood, the role of our men, and more importantly, as I see our young men in the audience, how do we project the future for our young men? So please applaud my fraternity, Omega Psi Phi, for, again, hosting this Congressional Black Caucus Forum. And in the absence of our president, who, in my opinion, I worked very closely with the president's administration. I served as his fatherhood representative, under his leadership and administration. So I was blessed to sit front row center with the president at the White House around so many issues that he felt was so important to him to move our country forward. But in my opinion, which triggers this conversation, is that when the president took office, before he could tackle health care, criminal justice reform, education, dealing with foreign policy, domestic policy, all the issues that come along with being a president, he took office just with one notion, Brother Crump, that he's a father. He's a father who grew up without his father. And if you've ever been around the president, his whole personality and being and character was rooted around how could he be the best father to his two daughters, how can he be the best man and husband to his wife, and then how him seeing himself like any other young boy, how can young boys live the kind of future that he was challenged with. So I just felt that part of his legacy was rooted in the fact that one of his first initiatives that he started, Brother Congressman, was his Fatherhood Initiative. And I know it got shifted under the second term under the My Brother's Keeper when Trayvon Martin got murdered. But I always like to say that it was the fatherhood platform first, and then it got shifted into how do we create a society where dads are important, but also we cannot live in a society where we're seeing our young black boys being gunned down. Amen. In our society. And so that's where the My Brother's Keeper program got started. But I, like the president, and I think we all can agree, we cannot have any conversations, whether it's here at the Congressional Black Caucus or anywhere, particularly in the black community, without making sure our fathers fit into this conversation.
That's right. Mm-hmm. That's right.
Amen. We have to be very intentional when it comes to the fact that we need our fathers. And our president was very intentional on that. And my role, being his champion, was very intentional. And my fraternity, Omega Psi Phi, has been very intentional from day one in that partnership with the president, knowing that we as men of Omega, we as men of Alpha Phi Alpha, we as men as Kappa Alpha Psi, we as men as Phi Beta Sigma, all know that we cannot be in existence as part of this divine non-fraternal organization without knowing that part of that birth and who we are is connected to fatherhood.
That's right.
Am I making sense?
That's right.
Amen.
That's right.
Okay. So that's why we're here. Then the other piece, as you see in the subject line, the president wanted to know that it wasn't just about fathers paying child support and connecting with your children and doing fatherhood activities, taking them to a ball game, helping them with their homework. But at the end of the day, when a man becomes a father, he don't only become someone responsible for his own children, he then becomes responsible for the community that he is in. he becomes responsible for the women of those children and the women in the community. And then at large, that man is become a protector of that community. So real fatherhood just don't stop with your children or your child. Real fatherhood rolls back against policies and barriers that damages us in our community. So one of the things we want to accomplish here today is not only dealing with the president's legacy on fatherhood, but how do we have this call to action to say, can we have our men step up in our communities? And I'm talking to a lot of the sisters who've been out here protesting, marching, commentating on the news, commentating in the media. And some of them still believe that we're not valued and important in this conversation of what is happening to us and our people. And I know that women have been dealing with issues on two fronts. One has been they have their own gender issues of how they're being treated by us in this society. So they're raising their voices on that. The second piece is that I get from women, where's our men by our side? And so to answer that question, we want to make sure we are playing our part. And it's not enough for our women to be out on the front line, and we don't see our men in the front, on the side, the other side, and behind the side. And so the piece that we want to have is how do we as men have a conversation on protecting our women and children? And with that said, I want to do some introductions, and then I want to bring up our esteemed congressman who has hosted this forum for us for the last 7 years. Can we first acknowledge the president of our fraternity? We call him our Grand Basileus, Antonio Knox. Can you please? And I want to acknowledge the real boss of the fraternity who allows him to be our president is his wife, our First Lady, our Delta sister, Sister First Lady Angela Knox. Please stand. All right. Then I want to acknowledge a dear brother who has been leading the fraternity's efforts on our Fatherhood Mentoring Initiative. And without him, Omega Psi Phi would not have the platform and the kind of success and progress we've been having on this issue. Can you please applaud Robert Fairchild here in the 3rd District for leading us and our fraternity through our Fatherhood Mentoring Initiative and platform all over the country with our brothers. And I always tease him. He does more in that wheelchair than people who stand on their 2 feet.
Hello.
And that's because of his dedication and his leadership and how much this man is committed to this work and this fraternity. Thank you, man.
Amen.
So now I think I could bring you on, Brother Congressman. I just got to check the room first. And then I'll acknowledge some of our special guests of our young men. But I know our Congressman Clyburn has been very busy, but he always takes time out to support us and his brothers in this fraternity. And one thing I want to say about you, Brother Congressman, you are one of our most esteemed leaders in this country. Mm-hmm. You're one of our most highest ranking leaders on the Hill. I know how much President Obama has leaned on you. I know your voice has been heard as a senior member of Congress. So it's an honor, not just for you to be our brother, but it's an honor for us as a black community to have you as one of our congressional leaders. So with that said, can you please welcome to present some remarks to us, Congressman out of South Carolina's 6th District, Jim Clyburn.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you very much, Brother Boone. To all the panelists here today, thank you all so much for being a part of this effort. Let me say to our esteemed Grand Bachelors how much I appreciate his leadership. As you just heard, I'm from South Carolina, but I respect him highly, though he's from a northerner from North Carolina. He's all right with me. And I thank him so much for his leadership, and thank you, Madam First Lady. Brother Fairchild, thank you. I want you to know that whenever you call, my staff knows that they're supposed to do whatever you ask them to do. And I thank you so much. Now, I know a little bit about being a real, stern boss in a wheelchair. My wife for 56 years is in a wheelchair, but she told me I need to be home tomorrow evening, so I'm going to miss the reception tomorrow evening because I know how to respond to stern leadership. So thank you so much. I want to say just a couple of things to you. This morning, I awakened to some news that bothered me a little bit. First of all, some of you who follow football, you may know that the University of South Carolina, which is in my district, I have 7 HBCUs in my district. But I also have the University of South Carolina, the Citadel, Medical University of South Carolina, Columbia College. They're all in my congressional district. And of course, it's kind of easy for me, though I will be up in Clemson in a couple of weeks on the 7th of October, I believe it is, to participate in events up there surrounding the Clemson football team. The University of South Carolina is in my district, so it's kind of easy as to who I'm going to be pulling for the last game of the year. I heard on this morning that a young man who plays football for the University of South Carolina, Deborah Samuels, who many of you may have seen, on the very first play from scrimmage in Carolina's first game, or game the other night. He scored on the very first play. In the very first game, he ran a kickoff back, the very first play of the game. But in the third quarter, last Saturday, he laid scrimmaging on the ground from a broken leg.
Wow.
And from what I heard this morning, that broken leg can very well end his football career. Now, a couple of years earlier, in his senior year, the most talked about football player in the country was Marcus Lattimore.
Mm-hmm.
Marcus Lattimore suffered an injury. He's now doing okay. He's coaching high school football. But I point this out to say why this initiative is so important. It's very easy for us to sit back and watch the scoreboards on Saturday afternoon, be entertained at football games. But it's something else to prepare young men for life. One fleeting movement. Y'all remember, it was that Jackson. Running down the sideline.
Mm-hmm.
Bo Jackson. Nobody touched him.
Yep.
But he was running, made a misstep, And on that misstep, he fractured his hip, ended his career. He was the most talked about football player in the world
Yep.
at this time. Now, you know, American football player. I know soccer is football too. Pele was the most talked about in the world. I know all of that. But my point here is we have to prepare people with the solid foundations upon which to build careers and upon which to build futures. We cannot, some people do well, but when you look at the percentages of young men playing football in high school, how many of them get to football in college, and how many of them get to make a living off of football, that's not the way you prepare young men for life. It is our job in these fraternities.
That's right. That's right.
It's our job to prepare young men for life.
Amen.
Now, I wasn't much of a football player. I got my injury early. And kind of into that. I was a pretty good baseball player. But as many of you know, I'm an avid golfer. And so much of my life surrounds golf. And every year, the first weekend in August, I host a golf tournament down in the little town of Santee, South Carolina. It's the biggest event in rural South Carolina. Not because I say so, because the state of South Carolina has recognized it on 2 occasions as being the most impactful event in rural South Carolina, where I've had as many as 600 golfers. Last week, first weekend in August, we gave out 125 scholarships. Wow. Young high school graduates. Each one of those students got from $1,000 to $4,000 in cash, based on what school they were going to. Each one of them got a laptop. Each one of them got a Microsoft software package to go with that laptop. We counted it up last August 5th and 6th. We handed out over $600,000 from that golf tournament to young high school graduates. And the reporter came up to me and asked me, he says, how many scholarships did you give last year? I said, 125. You mind telling me what has happened with those students? I said, I don't know. He said, well, don't you think it's incumbent upon you to make some determinations as to whether or not these students are following through, and shouldn't you follow up to see whether or not they're being successful? I said, no. So let me tell you what is incumbent upon me. It is incumbent upon me to provide opportunities.
Amen.
And if I provide the opportunities, then it becomes incumbent upon those young men and women to make the best of those opportunities. We in these fraternities cannot guarantee success.
Amen.
But we can guarantee opportunities, and we are coming up short if we don't.
Preach.
That's what we are to do. And in doing so, let me say just 2 things to you, and I'm going to use a personal experience. And I don't want to be disrespectful. Val Demings, Congresswoman from Florida, just entered the room. She got one of them. And I'm glad she's here because I want to say something about me and her. Now, don't get nervous. Brother Demings. When I first ran for office in 1970, I won the Democratic primary, went into the general election, and the evening of the election, at 10 o'clock in the evening, I was declared the winner. It was one of the biggest celebrations I've ever seen in the old Francis Marion Hotel. It's renovated now, it's still, the hotel's still there. It was the biggest celebration you've ever seen in the hotel. The whole hotel celebrated. The first African American. to get elected to the legislature from South Carolina. Well, that was 10 o'clock in the evening. Around 3:30 the next morning, my doorbell rang, and there was a reporter at the door. He said to me, "You better get down to the courthouse. I just left the courthouse. Something's gone wrong." My wife and I jumped in the car. Now, there's one thing about celebrating the Omega way. She had to drive down to the courthouse. So we got down to the courthouse. And they said to me, rather than being a 500 vote winner, somebody forgot to carry a 1. Wow. And you were a 500 vote loser. Now, the next morning when I got to my office, a reporter called. And reporter Barbara Williams, never will forget her. She says, "Clyburn, what happened?" I says, "Look like I didn't get enough votes." She says, "Oh, Clyburn, you know what everybody is saying." Well, I knew what everybody was saying. Everybody was saying that this election had been stolen. And I felt that it had been stolen. And so she pressed me. And I said, whatever happened, I just didn't get enough votes. That's all I would say. This was Wednesday morning after the election. On Thursday morning, John Carl West, who was elected governor on that day, was passing through Charleston to go down to Kiowa Island to take some R&R. He stopped and picked up some newspapers at a newsstand, and there he was greeted with a headline on the front page of the Charleston papers, "I just didn't get enough votes." That's what was in quotations. He saw that. We didn't have cell phones then. He went to a phone booth. He called my wife and said to her, "Ask Jim to meet me in Columbia on Monday." And I met him in Columbia on Monday, and he invited me to his staff. No African American in the history of the state had ever served on the governor's staff. He invited me to his staff. I joined his staff, and he said to me, "We will not leave our wounded on the battlefield." Wow. Now, let's suppose I had told that reporter what I was really feeling. Let's just suppose I had told that reporter what I really thought had happened. The headline would have been different. And John Carl West's attitude would have been different. But I decided to preserve the integrity of my efforts to run another day. And I did run again in 1978. And I got 48% of the vote running statewide for Secretary of State. But you need 50% plus 1 to win. 8 years later, I ran again in 1986, and I got 48% of the vote, needing 50% plus 1 to win. And a friend of mine said to me on that occasion, "What are you going to do now? You just lost the 3rd time, and you know what they say, 3 strikes and you're out." I said to my friend, "That's a baseball rule." And no person should live their lives by baseball rules. So I want to say it to each one of you young people here today, and each one of you who are mentoring them. Just remember what your grandparents taught you. If at first you don't succeed, try and try again. They did not tell you. They didn't say try 1 more time or 2 more times. They did not place a numerical limit on how many times you try. So let me say to you young people, as I said to, I got a high school choir up here tonight. We'll be singing Calhoun County High School, St. Matthews, South Carolina. hometown, Viola Davis. I got them up here, and I met with them today, had breakfast with them this morning, had lunch with them today, and I'll have dinner with them after they finish singing tonight. I said to them what I'm saying to you. You should never give up. If at first you don't see, you keep trying.
Yes.
If I had given up after losing 3 times, I never would have become the number 3 guy in the United States House of Representatives, which is what I was after '92. I went down to Florida with Val Demings. Nobody gave her a chance to win. She had a good shot of winning, and they changed the rules in the middle of her race, redefined her district. But she didn't give up. She stayed in the battle, and she lost. I was among the ones saying to her, don't give up. Stay in the game.
Amen.
She stayed in the game, and last year, she ran again and won big and came here as one of the most respected new members of the United States Congress, Val Demings. When I first met her, I knew she was a very smart woman. She didn't have to tell me anything. All I knew was she had married an Omega, a very smart woman. And so I want to thank them, and I want to thank you, and I want to thank all of you. But I want us to take this seriously. I want us to take this seriously. We have a jaded history in this country. All of us are anxious about the future of this country. We're battling some demons on Capitol Hill. I'm going to be rushing out of here after I leave here, and I'm going back to Capitol Hill today. I'm meeting at 3 o'clock this afternoon with the mayor of Columbia, who happens to be African American. Yeah. Now he's a Catholic, but he's all right.
Good.
We have some serious challenges ahead of us. But I close with this, and I want this to be something that you remember. If you don't remember anything else, remember this. Our society does not move on a linear plane. Our society moves like a pendulum on a clock. It goes from left to right, and it goes back left again. That's the way this country has always been. You've gone from Dred Scott to Blessed versus Ferguson, to Brown versus Board of Education,
Yes, sir.
and back again to the voting rights case down in Georgia. I'm sorry, Alabama.
Shelby County, Alabama.
Shelby County. Left to right, right to left, back left again. And what makes the difference is when citizens intervene in the process. So I want you young people to get all the education that you can get.
Yes.
As old folks would say down in South Carolina, it may be different where you're from, get all the book learning that you can get. But you get involved in the process. You vote on election day. You get involved. I started working in campaigns at the age of 12. I started organizing sit-ins at the age of 16. You ain't ever too young to get involved in the process. You get involved, you stay involved, you can make this system work. Just remember this. When the pendulum goes from left to right, it passes through the center. When it goes from right back left, it passes through the center. The pendulum spends twice as much in it divides as much time in the center as it does left or right.
Wow.
Remember that. So don't ever give up. Just get prepared. The pendulum is going to come back your way. You just be prepared to receive it when it does. Thank you so much.
That little South Carolina date.
Look, Clyburn, please give him another round of applause.
Kevin, let's see your book.
He fights for us every day. And while he never forgets home and takes care of those back in South Carolina, his impact is even felt in North Carolina. But we know that he fights for us every day, no matter what state that we're in. And because of that, we want to recognize him. Every time we've ever called as we have our annual events, and we don't have opportunities, but we'll call Brother Clyburn and he'll make a way for us to have this opportunity to be able to present to you. So we want to recognize him and thank him, and I'll read to you just briefly what it says. Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Supreme Council, an appreciation to Honorable James E. Clyburn for your outstanding support, guidance, and leadership on the issues forum. President Obama's legacy on fatherhood, black men and boys, standing up for justice, protecting our women, children, and communities during this 47th Annual Legislative Conference of the Congressional Black Caucus, presented by Antonio F. Knox Sr., 40th Grand Bachelors.
Thanks. Thank you. Oh,
Carolina boys.
yeah.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
And I remember that touchdown very well. It was against North Carolina State, my alma mater, where I played for 4 years. So, Brother Boone has told me to make a few comments right now versus coming back at the end. And first and foremost, I want to thank Brother Boone and Brother Fairchild and the Fatherhood Committee for all that they do. It's not just today, but it's throughout the year that they are constantly working and supporting and pushing us in the Fatherhood Initiative program. So I want to thank them. Please give them a round of applause. I want to thank this esteemed panelists for the information that you're going to share and for your willingness to come together. We recognized in Omega a long time ago that it doesn't matter who gets the credit as long as our community wins.
That's right.
And coming together as one, we're so much more powerful than we are working as individuals.
Yeah.
I've said in Omega that we are one. And it's been said now in other organizations because we've all recognized that we are one. And we are all in this together.
Amen.
It doesn't matter what you have. It doesn't matter what degrees you have. It doesn't matter other material things that you have. We're all in this together. So I thank you all for what you're doing. I want to say to you is that they're going to touch on some very, very important points. Fatherhood and mentoring. Our call to action is to make sure that the opportunity for reentry is there. And we got to fight criminal justice reform because that impacts the families as they take the dads away. And I don't want to get into what they're going to talk about because I could be here for a while. But I must say to you, no matter what's said, no matter what's put out, the only way it's going to be impactful and the only way it's going to happen is that we get out and vote. No matter what solution we put in place, it requires us to have people in office who believe in our communities, who believe in equality and justice for all. So as they share with you, our challenge is this. We cannot ever think that anybody running for an office can't win. Because if we own it, some of us didn't go vote because we thought a certain person couldn't win. Say he's too crazy. But now a certain person is in office. So we cannot ever take for granted. We can't ever think that our vote doesn't count. Because had it not been for that even number Brother Clyburn faced, it wouldn't have been as easy to make that change. So every one vote counts. We cannot ever think that a candidate, that we don't have any good candidates. We must know that people died for us to have this opportunity. We must understand that right now, instead of celebrating voting rights, there's voter suppression. We must know that if you don't go out and vote, it's a vote for the wrong candidate. So as they share with you, as they give you the facts, and as they tell you about the number of things, the issues that we have to work on, just add to that, that to make it all happen, I have to go vote. Omega Psi Phi Voter Education, Registration, and Mobilization Committee. We're going to make sure that we educate our people. We're going to make sure that they're registered to vote. We're going to make sure that we mobilize and get them to the polls. And we will stay there and not allow anybody to be intimidated. We must win every election. The local elections are very important. They're very important. And then we must win the state elections. If not for those mean-spirited people in office who got there because we didn't stay awake and go vote, there would have been so much more accomplished by our president, the 44th President Obama. But we were not awake, and we allowed those mean-spirited people to get in. But that can't happen anymore because we've learned from our mistakes, and we will not allow those same things to happen. We must make sure that we do our part. So I'm asking everybody, we're going to come together as one. No matter what organization you're in, or no matter if you're not in an organization. We're going to make sure that everybody goes out and vote. Now, I'm going to get out of the way because Brother Boone is standing up. He's trying to get me out of here. But I'm going to come back because I see Brother Clark and our young men out here. I'm going to come back because I have something that I want to present to you all. So, Brother Boone, I'll get out of the way, and then I'll come back to you.
Thanks, Brother Grant. Appreciate it. And we certainly appreciate the remarks of our congressional leader, Brother Clyburn. So I got to do this real quick. I'm going to introduce some special young men who are here, including our brother, Dr. Clark, with his Young Men for Richard Wright Charter School. So we're going to, you might as well just stand now. Stand. Dr. Clark makes sure that every year, as a field trip, and I know some of the young men love kind of being out of class, but every year he makes sure that they come to the Congressional Black Caucus in large numbers to be visible and present and let people know that they are young men who are stepping up and rising up. So again, thank you, Brother Clark, for your leadership and all you're doing. We also have a group of young men, college young men from Halifax Community College. They all came dressed in bow ties and sweaters and suits looking dapper, but they're part of a campus group called Pride. Promise, respect, integrity, discipline, employment. These are preparing men on a college campus for intellectual, academic, and educational success. Can the young men of Pride please stand up? Then we have some other young men from McLennan Success Academy, College Park, Georgia, who came with their mentor and leader, Mr. Williams. He brought 3 young men from College Park. I want him and the 3 young men to stand. tell ya, there's some alpha men up in here. You got them jackets on. You see that, Parks, Kevin?
But change your tie.
You got to decide, do you keep those colors or some other colors? But either color, we appreciate your leadership. Mr. Williams, we appreciate you young men coming all the way from Georgia. And with that said, real quick, sisters, I'm going to just ask all the members of our sororities to stand, but I want to, at least for the sake of this conversation, we did this by design. Every panelist is a member of the Divine Nine. So I would like the members of Alpha Phi Alpha to stand for your two distinguished panelists, members of your organization. I would like the members of Kappa Alpha Psi to stand with my good friend Elmani Vinny. And I would like my brothers with the beautiful blue blazers to stand for Janabo Williams, my good friend out of New Jersey.
Phi Beta Sigma.
Phi Beta Sigma. And of course, we already announced Brother Crump, our Vice President, Vice Grand Bosses, Dr. David Marion, is our esteemed leader in our fraternity, Omega Psi Phi. But I think I say the best for last. We have Dr. Myers. And she's a member of Delta Sigma Theta. And I told her, you're going to be on a panel with just the brothers and the men. She says, I got it. I can hold it down. I'm a Delta. I can hold it down. But we certainly want all our Deltas to stand in honor of having one of your members on our panel, Dr. Stephanie Myers. And other members of the sororities, please stand and just take a bow so we can applaud you as well. Thank you. All right. So now, real quick, we're going to have Brother Earl Wilson as the co-chairman of our Fatherhood Initiative. And like always, they'll come up and do a slide presentation for about 3 to 4 minutes about the great work that the fraternity is doing. Then from there, I'm going to slide right into our esteemed panel to get this conversation going. And most importantly, we're going to save at least 30 minutes to do Q&A from the floor. So please, Brother Earl Wilson, come on up.
All right. Oh, the shop is $100 bill.
It's not easy being a month.
Gotta go home tonight. So my daughter's in the morning.
Thank you, Brother Boone. First and always, give it honor to God.
Yep.
We must honor him because what we are doing today and through our work in Omega is about God's business. First of all, putting men first to lead the family, to uplift our communities. Secondly, our 4 cardinal principle, uplift. To uplift and mentor our young men to replace the fathers of today. We're just going to give you a quick snapshot of the work that Omega has been doing throughout the world. Since we signed an agreement with President Obama, this is our mission. It's for Omega men and men throughout this country to get more involved in their children's lives and help uplift our community. And we are doing this, we've been doing this since 2009 to protect the legacy of President Obama, looking at criminal justice reform, to end mass incarceration, to increase education, fight racial injustice, and also increase mental health awareness. These are some of the programs that we're working. Here are the 4 basic tenets that we have operated under. 1, public awareness. Everyone needs to know, all the way to the legislation, that this is a concern that has impacted our communities. I always tell the brothers, we got the cart before the horse. 1, you do a lot of mentoring of young men. But I'll tell you one thing, if we had dads being there doing mentoring we won't have to have mentoring programs, so we're gonna change this. Partnerships, we cannot do this alone. Omega has joined partners with various departments of the education. We partner with the health associations and also the legislation throughout this country, the state legislation throughout this country to help get the word about the importance of fatherhood. Public advocacy is one of the initiatives that we are working as well. And the last thing is celebration and uplifting of fathers. For you always see on Mother's Day, you can't get into a restaurant.
Hello.
But when it comes to Father's Day, you can get just as many seats as you want. So,
Right in the front. Right in the front.
so dads, we got work to do. And throughout the fraternity, we've touched more than 100,000 fathers through our various programs, from rallies to father dinner dances to mentoring programs, youth social activity. One of the easiest things for us to do as we mentor young men, just invite the dad. A lot of times he doesn't know. You don't have to create anything, as we tell the brothers. When you're doing your mentoring program, just ask the dads to come. A lot of times when we're talking to kids, they can tell you everything their mother is doing, but nobody can tell you what dad is doing. So we need to change this, brothers. Criminal justice reform and reentry. This is one of the key initiatives that we are working going into the prisons. Our Supreme Council, when we was out in Las Vegas, I went to visit the prisons there, and this is something that we must do because 95% of the folks who go to prison is going to return back to the community. And we must do those things and get those fathers back involved in their children's lives. This is a must because these fathers are going to come back into our communities. Brother, you're on my mind. This is one of the initiatives of our first vice grand bosses that were brought to us by the National Institutes of Health, talking about mental health. The impact that it's having on fathers and on families is something that we don't want to talk about in the black community. So what we're doing, I know in Atlanta at the end of this month, is we're doing our health expo. We're asking that you add, brother, you're on my mind. Talk about mental health because this is plaguing our communities and our families, and it's very important. One of the things we also are doing is fighting racial injustice. Recently at our leadership conference, Brother Crump and other distinguished guests came in and talked to us about the importance of jury duty.
Amen.
Why it's so important that you, when you're called upon to get on jury duty, to go there and not make an excuse. Because if you're not on those jury duties, you're going to continue to see the alarming rate of folks that are going to prisons who don't understand the plight of those folks who are facing those judges and those juries. So it's important. And then recently, the incident you had in Charlottesville, Omega, right off the top, Brother Grant, this message sent out to us, that this is a concern. And we, as Omega men, must get involved in fighting racial injustice. One of the most critical initiatives that we're having right now is our Future Dads program, where we are taking this initiative to college campuses around the country, asking our undergraduates to get involved in this initiative, where we are talking things about a father's value, premature parenting, rights of a father, non-custodial parents' rights. And we are taking it down to our undergraduates so that a lot of them won't make the same mistake when they go off to college as some of us did and become single fathers. Then you have your program out in LA, the brothers in Untitled Chapter, Brother Ricky Lewis and the other brothers in California, one of the most powerful mentoring programs that you'll see around this country. This program has been going on for over 20 plus years. And hopefully President Obama, as he started his new mentoring program, that he'll look at this particular initiative and get some of the great ideas that allowed this program to last for over 20 plus years through our mentoring initiative. And every year at our Grand Conclave and various conferences, Omega bring in young men to host youth leadership conference for our youth. The Affordable Health Care Act. Everyone knows this is something that we're talking about right now. is very important to this nation. You know, there's supposed to be a vote on trying to abolish this. And as Omega Men, we've taken on this challenge to have fathers, one, to go see the doctor. There's something just as simple as getting men to take a blood test. Because if their health is not good, they're not any good to their family. So we've got engaged when you had your telephone conference calls in Atlanta to call fathers to get them to sign up for this very important initiative. And in Atlanta, at the end of this month, we're going to host a health expo along with a motorcycle ride at our international headquarters, where we'll bring in Congressman Johnson, Hank Johnson, out of Georgia, come in and talk about the affordable health care. We need to become educated on this important initiative because health care is a must for this nation. And we as Omega Men must continue to lead this charge. And our expo is also going to go towards one of our programs. The donations that we receive will go towards St. Jude's, which is one of Omega's partners. And then on the education front, Manhood 101. This is one of the initiatives that Brother Lewis and the other youth mentoring program initiate and talking to young men about being a father. Simply some things, just praying with young men. Talking to them about the importance of education. And our fatherhood programs that we have throughout the country, the one you see there is in Broward County. Fathers go in and work with the mothers through the health department, and they graduate through a fatherhood program. So this is an initiative that the brothers in Broward County in Florida are hosting. And we have a quarterly news bulletin with Brother Fairchild and the other 12 district committee chairpersons. We send out a newsletter once a quarter to tell our story of all the different initiatives that the fraternity is involved in. Here are the list of your committee's representatives throughout the country. It tells you about the health expo that we're going to be hosting at our international headquarters. So throughout this country, you can go to our website and see who those folks are in your area. We ask that you contact them. We also host training at each one of our leadership conferences and various district meetings to push this initiative, and one in particular on domestic violence, because this is one of the problems that we're having that plagues our family, and fathers play a vital role in changing this effort. We also have a fatherhood guide that we'll be able to provide to the brotherhood to tell how this program works. And we're asking our brothers of Omega to get involved and get more engaged in what we're doing. And we need your support, the community, as we go out here. And here are some of the resources that you can look for if you want some more information on fatherhood, some of the collaborative partners that we are involved with, from the White House to HUD, Department of Education, and various organizations that allows us to do this initiative. Again, thank you all very much. Your support, your help is very important as we get to change the pendulum and make our fathers to be the leaders of the family and to lead our community. Again, thanks very much.
Thanks, Brother Wilson. Thank you. So now I want to get right into our panel. And many of you have in your seats a booklet that has their bios, titles, and for the sake of time, I want to be able to just get right to them. So as I bring each one to their presentation, then following after that, then I'll introduce the next one. This brother needs no introduction for his work, being one of the most esteemed civil rights attorneys, one of the leading legal voices around these cases, both low and high profile, around the killings of our black boys, the mistreatment of our women, the police brutality, the justice system. So now that we are into our post-Obama, and Brother Crump has been a great part of that president's work pushing criminal justice reform. He's been at the White House. He's counseled with the president on these issues. So with the current administration and someone like Jeff Sessions, who wants to roll back these policies that President Obama's been pushing, mandatory minimums. Really want to bring 3 strikes rule again. And if you saw Trump in New York City, in Hofstra, Long Island, where he spoke to the police force and ridiculed and made jokes about how police can treat people who are arrested or in the community, and what he really was saying, how to treat us, to go back to business as usual from their side. So, Brother Crump, I want you to just come share with us, where do we go now with our fight for justice? No matter how many times we see videos, go to court, can't seem to get convictions, dealing against a racist, white supremacist society and culture that's ran by certain evil men. Let's make it plain.
Tell us how you feel.
And where do we go from here? And what are your assessment in terms of where we are right now, where we go from here in terms of fighting for justice in your work?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Brother Boone. Certainly to our Grand Bosselors, Tony Knox, and the other leaders of Omega, Brother Marion. Brother Boone talked about in the aftermath of the killing of Trayvon Benjamin Martin that President Obama started this Fatherhood Initiative. This is before Black Lives Matter. This before anybody was talking about the future of our children. And as I look at the future of our people and these young black men gathered here today, I think about that day when Trayvon Martin was shot in the heart by George Zimmerman as he walked home from the 7-Eleven. But America was also shot in the heart that night on February 26, 2012. And I'm so honored to be sitting here beside my former law partner and my partner, brother for life, Darrell Parks, and attorney Chris O'Neill, who we represented Trayvon Martin's family. And the one thing I tell people, Brother Knox, is it was bad, y'all. It was bad how George Zimmerman killed Trayvon on the streets. But it is worse how they killed Trayvon Martin in the courtroom, and how black boys all over America, brown boys all over America are killed every day in courtrooms. Don't take Ben Crump's word for it. Just go in the back of any courtroom, Lanita, any courtroom, and just see how justice is being dispensed when it's little Billy or little Becky versus little Leroy or Shaniqua. I mean, it could be the same fact pattern, and you have completely different outcomes because, Parks, what's happening is when they kill our children softly with these trumped up charges, where they now have felony convictions that they must bear on their backs like a cross forever, Kevin, forever. I mean, with this information age, when this little kid pleads at 18 years old for reckless driving and they check it as a felony, he can never escape it. And the collateral consequences, Brother Knox, are just devastating. Not only when you have that felony conviction, do you not have the right to serve in the military, or you can never ever serve on a jury. I have found out, Brother Barnes, that there are 38,000 collateral consequences once you get a felony conviction. Brother Earl, many people don't know once you have been an ex-felon, once you become an ex-con, you can't even get life insurance. I mean, if 1 in every 3 black men, the statistics say, are going to spend more than 9 months in jail or prison. So you look to the left of you and you look to the right of you. 1 person in that 3, the statistics say, are going to get caught up in the prison industrial complex. So what we have to do is start to challenge this legalization of discrimination. Because when you think of those horrific statistics, 7% is where the population of black men in America are. we only make up 7%, but yet we make up almost 50% on death row. So you got to conclude one or two things, ladies and gentlemen. You got to conclude either one, black men are some evil, nefarious, just terrible people. That's number one. Or number two, you got to conclude that this system is broken. And I just refuse to believe that black men are evil and nefarious like the criminal justice system try to make us out to be. I just refuse to accept that. And I just say briefly, because I know time is at a premium, we have the women, black women, Hispanic women, the demographics of people being incarcerated today at alarming rates now are minority women. Because you see, with this new change of administration, they rescinded what President Obama had tried to do. Ms. Miles talking about we're not going to incentivize for-profit prisons. Sessions and Trump said, oh no, we bringing all of that back. You know, this modern day for-profit prison, they are building these prisons, and guess who they have in mind that's going to serve?
Hello.
And if they can't get enough black men, guess who they looking at? They looking at black women.
Hello.
And so what we have to do is understand this legalization of discrimination. The fact that when they take the women out, many times they already got the men in prison. Now the children are being left to the government, the system, these foster homes. And during President Bush's administration, you know, I think the Passage Pro law, they started that fast track adoption. It's almost like they are literally back in slavery days when they're taking the strong little black boys and girls out of their parents' hands and selling them to another plantation. That's right. That's what we're dealing with. And we have to speak truth to power every time we get a chance. And it's all about profit. For-profit prisons, for-profit probation. Attorney Parks and I, when we was in Ferguson, America learned about for-profit policing. You know, taxation by citation on the people who can least afford it. Black and brown people. So that's what we're dealing with over and over again. And it's nothing new. It's the vestiges of slavery. And now we're looking at these for-profit foster care systems where it's big money to get our children in foster care. And then Big Pharma comes along and they start over-medicating our children with all these psychotic drugs and all these things to affect our children. And so really this is about the value of all those little black and brown children and their right to the American dream, the equal opportunity to have the American dream for our children too. I conclude reminding us of what Martin Luther King said. You know, Dr. King said the coward comes along and asks the question, is it safe? And then he said, expediency comes along and asks the question, is it politically correct? And then he said, oh, vanity comes along, boom, and asks the question, is it popular? But then Dr. King said, conscience comes along.
Yes, sir.
And asks the question, is it right? And he concluded that one must take a position that is neither popular nor politically correct nor safe, but one must take a position because his conscience tells him it is the right thing to do. It is the right thing to do to stand up for our children, to speak up for our children, to fight for our children, because they're our children. And if we don't stand up and fight for them, ain't nobody gonna stand up and fight for them. So we have to stop this legalization of discrimination because it's open season on our children. Thank you.
As always, he brings it. He brings it. Brother Parks, as Brother Crump mentioned, you have been in those courtrooms with him.
Okay.
So tell us what it's like as a lawyer, civil rights attorney, going into them courtrooms, fighting on our behalf, on behalf of the lives of those black children, us as black people, What is it like, and what do you need from the community in terms of supporting you as you fight for us in those courtrooms?
Thank you so much. You know, about 2 months ago, when I had a case and we went to federal court, and the case had happened in December of 2015, and Ben was serving as National Bar President at the time, and we had just finished a tobacco case, and we got a call. We were really getting ready to go on Christmas, it was a few days before Christmas, and a lady had been killed at a hospital in a small town in northern Florida. And so we took the case. The lady had been in the hospital. They threw her out of the hospital with the use of the police. She died at the police car, collapsed. They bring her back in, and she dies. And so we take the case, and the case is a mixture because it's a civil rights case, but it has a medical malpractice component too. But we litigate the case over the years, and we're getting ready to go to trial later on this year. And we go to court this past July. Ben and I knew the judge very, very well. And so we thought we kind of knew how things were going to turn out. One thing I didn't count on, even this judge who I thought so well of, had an issue where he couldn't appreciate the fact that a older black lady, about 55 years of age, who had been in the hospital for about 45 minutes, who didn't want to leave. That was the issue. She didn't want to leave. She said she couldn't breathe still. So when the officer came, she continues to complain that she can't breathe. Well, the hospital person said, I want her out. Well, the reason he wanted her out, he knew her from before. She had become what they call a frequent flyer. I mean, everything that was wrong, she went to the doctor. Y'all know somebody like that.
And she admitted
Well, this time she wasn't faking. She wasn't faking. She really was sick. And that hospital person, because he didn't like her, because she was a frequent flyer, because that hospital person had heard her say bad things about that hospital in previous times, said, I want her out. So the officer obliges. He starts taking her out, tries to put her in cuffs, has problems. She collapses at the car. The problem, though, was that my judge I was arguing in front of seemed to be okay that after 45 minutes, if a black person didn't want to leave, that it was okay for her to be kicked out. That was the battle, the mentality. And so because he couldn't get past that initial step of it was okay to kick her out, then he couldn't see the other things that we were talking about. Now, like most judges, if y'all know judges, they love to split the baby. They want to give you some and give him some. So he did a little bit of that too in the course of the case. Ben and I were probably stymied because we thought that this particular person, who we know to be a fair person, couldn't get past that little hurdle and that little mental aspect about the value of our lives. And that ends up being the battle as a black lawyer that you fight every day. Can I convince the person, the authority, the person making the decision that this particular life is worth fighting for, and that you shouldn't have such a flagrant disregard, especially if you happen to be the authority, either judicially, from a police standpoint, or medically, to protect that life. And so my point in saying all that is, as you fight for black lives, some of y'all are going to get a chance to be on what we call judicial nominating commissions. What's that? That's a group of people that appoints judges. So in my particular federal circuit, I was in federal court in that particular case. Monday, I'm a federal commissioner in the Northern District. My commission meets Monday morning. I'll be there in person or by phone because I want to have an input as to the mentality. And I'll tell you the question I asked if y'all want to take some notes from me. When I interview judicial candidates, I ask a very simple question. What is your diverse experience in life? I want to know about their interaction with black people throughout their life. Because if I'm going to put you there, I want to know that you know some black people, you know, interact with some black people, you understand it, and that perspective is one that you're open to seeing and judging. One thing you'll find is most people who want to be judged think it's about you being smart enough to be a judge. Well, Danny, I want you to be fair enough to be a judge. So,
Amen.
as y'all go, that's my point about who I want sitting there as a person judging life. And I want to also encourage all of you, because, you know, when I sat there watching St. Louis the other night, right, and the judge had made the decision, you know, it was so many other factors that go into whoever that judge was and why he was sitting there. It's who put him there and what's that process. And so the people who were protesting, there's a misconnect between the protesters and how we put judges there. So I want y'all to be encouraging, and that's my take on it. Thank you.
This next gentleman I want to bring up, a very good friend of mine from Brooklyn like myself, by way of Jersey City, New Jersey. Phenomenal brother, and I could just speak all day long about his commitment to this work around the country, uplifting us as a people, from hip-hop to activism to BK Nation, his organization in Brooklyn. Kevin Powell has been one of the most foremost voices in the last 20 or more years on this issue, long before some of this stuff had become very popular. And I asked him, if he would come down to the Congressional Black Caucus and speak to us from his perspective on how we got here, where do we go from here. Give us your analysis, Kevin, in terms of, your thinking in terms of where we stand right now with criminal justice and, Father, the crisis around our black boys. And if you have not read his memoir, autobiography, it's definitely a must-read and should be in the hands of everyone here. And Brother Clark, every student at Richard Wright needs to have this book. It's The Education of Kevin Powell, Boy's Journey into Manhood. And so, Kevin, would you please come on up and just bless us with your words of wisdom and remarks. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm going to be mad brief, but can the young men who were announced earlier as students, wherever y'all came from, can y'all just stand up for a second? The young men who are students, all the young men who are students, can we give them another round of applause?
Yeah.
Stay up.
Yeah.
Let me, we talk about, at least I talk about it as an activist, action steps. Can y'all say action steps?
Action steps.
Action steps?
Action steps.
One of the basic action steps is to never let anyone define you for you. Are y'all with me out there?
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
And I want y'all to repeat something after me and wish would have been said to me when I was coming up. I want y'all to say it loud. I am a genius.
Genius.
I
am
am a genius.
genius.
I am
a
genius.
genius.
But don't stop there. I know we all in the social media. Young men, hashtag. Read, study, travel for the rest of our lives.
For the rest of our lives.
Hashtag, read, study, travel for the rest of our lives.
For the rest of our lives.
Two things, if you don't remember anything else I say. One, every single day you got to affirm yourself. I am a genius. Wow. The second thing is read, study, travel, because you got to be prepared for this life. Are y'all with me out there?
Yes, sir.
And this is not just for the young men here. This is for all of us here. Y'all can sit down. Give them a round of applause.
Yeah.
The reason I'm going to say this, I'm going to be quick, but I want to share some things really quickly. I was touched by Congressman Clyburn's remarks. I'm from New Jersey. I was born in Jersey City. The BD said I've been living in Brooklyn, half my life in Brooklyn, half my life in Jersey City. My whole family's from South Carolina, the low country of South Carolina. We are proud Geechees, y'all. You know what I'm saying? And as I was listening to Congressman Clyburn speak, I thought about my great-grandfather who about 100-some-odd years ago owned 400 acres of land, a black man in South Carolina. Why did he own 400 acres of land? Because coming out of slavery, this is not just black history, this is American history, which is why we got to read, study, travel, because people can say anything to you in 2017 if you don't know where you came from, right? My great-grandfather, like many black folks coming out of slavery, said two things that we got to get, some land or property or an education. Are y'all with me out there?
Yeah.
This is important. Well, racist white men in South Carolina killed my great-grandfather and took 397 of the 400 acres of land. Literally from that generation to my grandfather and grandmother to my mother, poverty. My mother left the South, came up to Jersey City where I was born and raised looking for a better life. She met my father, and unfortunately, we're talking about fatherhood here. My father is not like all the amazing men that are sitting in this room right now. He had what I call a slave mentality. What does that mean? Slavery in this country lasted for about 300 years, and when we were ripped out of Africa and brought to this part of the world, we were taught to hate ourselves and hate people who looked like us, and many of us who were men were socialized to be baby makers and breeders and nothing else. Are y'all with me?
Yes, sir.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm saying to y'all, get the full history of it. Read Dr. Ben, read Lerone Bennett, read Ivan Van Sertima. There's all kinds of books out there. But for the sake of brevity, understand this is where it came from. My mother fell in love with my father. My father fell in lust with my mother. My father was in his 30s. He was a grown man. My mom was a young woman in her early 20s. She was forced to go to the hospital by herself in a cab in Jersey City and gave birth to me. Are y'all with me? My mama has an 8th grade education because she was forced to work from the time she was 8 years old. We can't talk about fatherhood and manhood in these times if we don't know how we got here, y'all. How did we get here? My mama raised me on welfare, food stamps, government cheese, and kind of poverty I wouldn't wish on anybody, on anybody, on anybody. It's like she brought the poverty from the South right up to the North. I saw my father 2 or 3 times between the time I was born and when I was 8 years old. They never married. My mother was not one of those women who, and let's shout out mothers who've been holding it down.
That's right. That's right.
My mother was not one of those, she's not some stereotype trying to disparage or black, anything like that. She simply asked my father a simple question. Can you help us? Can you help us? Can you help me raise this male child by himself? I need a partner in some form to do this because I'm not quite clear completely how to raise a boy. Are y'all with me out there? When I was 8 years old, my mother went to the drugstore. We were so poor, we had no telephone in the house. We had no color TV. We had nothing, nothing. My mother asked my father on this particular day, can you help us? And he said to my mother, you lied to me. I'm not going to give you another nickel from again, and hung up the phone to her. Never saw my father again. Never heard from him again. Fatherhood pain all the way into my adult years. What changed my life was when I got to college. And I need to say this because El Monte's sitting right here. His aunt and uncle, his aunt was my high school 12th grade English teacher, one of the few black folks who was a mentor for me, who believed in me. His uncle was the first black student superintendent of schools in Jersey City, a black man who saved my life many times. When my mother went to his uncle because they were trying to put me in special education or saying that something's wrong with this black boy. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Oh, yeah. So I got to acknowledge when Brother Clyburn said, we will not leave our wounded on the battlefield. This is your brother saying this stuff. His family members saved my life. Let me say that. 3 things saved my life. Faith. Young men, we got to believe in something greater than ourselves.
That's right.
What else saved my life? My mother had a vision for my life. She went to the 8th grade, but from the time I was 3 or 4 years old, Kevin, you're going to college, you're going to college, you're going to college, you're going to college. My mama don't read nothing but the Bible and the local newspapers, but something in her said, I got to make sure that this boy, this black male, sees something that I wasn't able to see with my own life. She was sacrificing herself for me. And the 3rd thing that saved my life, we can't get anywhere without an education, y'all. And it's not just about going to college, it's understanding that learning has got to be for the rest of your lives. When I heard the name of that school, Brother Clark, Richard Wright High School, when I was growing up, from the time I was 11, 12 years old, I wanted to be a writer, man, because my mama took me to the library when I was 8 years old, saying you got to be around books. I didn't know that Richard Wright existed. I didn't know that Langston Hughes existed. I didn't know that Sonia Sanchez existed. Y'all feel what I'm saying? So even though I was an A student, I hated myself as a black male because I didn't see myself in my education. You want to know why there's all the violence in our communities, while there's all the pathologies happening, while there's all this trauma passed around? Most of us don't even know who we are. So how can we talk about fatherhood and manhood? I'm sitting here looking at Qs and Sigmas and Kappas and Alphas. I'm saying, think about all the great men in our organizations, but it doesn't mean anything if only we know who these people are.
Preach.
Langston Hughes is my favorite writer ever. Brothers Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. But it ain't till I got to college that I even heard of Langston Hughes. Wow. And so when we talk about mentorship, I want to respectfully disagree with one thing that I heard earlier. It's not just about creating opportunities for these young people. It is actually, in fact, making sure they get from point A to point B to Z. Are y'all with me out there?
That's right.
I'm going to bring it back to El Monte's aunt and uncle. Until the day that they both passed, a couple years apart, they literally tracked me from when I was a little boy until I was a grown man. His aunt would actually clip articles of things that I wrote. I'm the person who didn't even believe in myself when I was in 11th, 12th grade, and she said, you can write. She followed me all the way through all 12 of these books, y'all, because of mentorship. This is not rocket science. We can't even get to issues of voting, criminal justice system, prison industrial complex, if we don't plant seeds that how important it is. If you want to change this world and this community, you've got to be prepared. This is not a game. We've got to be prepared. You've got to be Thurgood Marshall if you want to be a lawyer or a judge. You've got to be Langston Hughes if you want to be a writer. Are y'all with me out there? We've got to get back to excellence in everything we do. And if there are fathers that are falling off, we got to say, you got to be a dynamic father like the men in this room, y'all. That's what I'm looking for. Last thing I'm going to say, mental health. I'm glad you brought it up, sir. I'm so glad Omegas are dealing with this. Because we sweep this under the rug as men. Women talk about it. Women talk in beauty salons, they talk at church, they talk in the sororities. We have got to talk about what affects us as men, what hurts us. We got to stop saying that it's not okay to cry, it's not okay to talk about stuff, it's not okay to be vulnerable. We got to open up, gentlemen. And older men here, if we don't do it, then the young men are not going to do it. It's really that simple. And I don't know about y'all, but I want to be healthy. We've got to strive to be healthy. You can't be a healthy father, a healthy man, if you're not talking about mental health and what affects you and what are you doing to take care of that. And if that means therapy, 25 years of therapy for me, then that's what we got to do. Because what I think about now that I just got married a couple months ago and I'm going to be a father one day in the next couple of years, I want to be a different kind of man than the kind of men that were around me when I was growing up, including my own biological father. Thank y'all.
Thanks, Kevin. Thank you. Next, we have Dr. Myers. I'm just going to, you want to present here or up here? Up there. Come on. As you see in your program, Dr. Myers is the co-founder and national co-chair of Black Women for Positive Change, a national network of professional women, good brothers, and millennials. She is president of the Positive Change Foundation and was national co-chair of the Black Women for Obama for Change. For the past 5 years, she has served as volunteer national coordinator with the 2017 Week of Nonviolence, Justice, and Opportunity, a violence prevention initiative implemented in 27 cities in collaboration with national and local organizations. Dr. Myers, share your great work and how can we support your work and how your work helps with the work that we're trying to do with our young men, boys, and fathers. Please, Dr. Myers.
Thank you very much. It is truly an honor to be the only woman on this panel of distinguished men. Thank you very, very much. I'm honored to represent Black Women for Positive Change. I'm honored to represent my sorority, Delta Sigma Theta sorority. And it is just really, I was sitting there thinking about listening to Brother Crump here, who was the national chair of the Week of Nonviolence in 2015, and listening to the brothers here, the Grand Basilius and Congressman Clyburn. And I was thinking, you know, going forward, we have to realize we have a nation of kings. Our Black men, young, intergenerational, older, seniors, you all are kings to us. My father was a king to me. He was a Kappa Alpha Psi, and he was just a tremendous man, available to me all the time. I could call him, he'd take the call immediately. He was never too busy to talk to his daughter. He was a man who brought flowers and gifts to my mother, and we had no violence in the house. And now I'm blessed to have a husband who brings flowers and gifts to me, and we have no violence in our house. So the National Week of Nonviolence really grew out of the Trayvon Martin tragedy. As Black women, we started out saying, oh, we're going to have this initiative to protect assets and build the middle class and strengthen our wealth. And then when Trayvon got killed, and other young people, men and women, we got really mad and said, the heck with that. We're going to change the culture of America. And that's our goal. We want to change the culture. This country was built on violence. Yes. Our ancestors came here in violence. Even white indentured servants came here in violence. The Native Americans were treated to violence. So really, kings, my young kings, my older kings, we women are looking to you to do as President Obama did, lead the world. We women are looking to you to do as Dick Gregory's done the last few weeks, kind of stop the society. Dick Gregory passed away, and everybody said, whoa. Here in D.C., Jim Vance passed away. Hey, they didn't have anything on NBC TV for 2 weeks except Jim Vance. I mean, really, you brothers have got power. And we want you to know that and use that, and we love that, and your protective power. Now, when we talk about nonviolence, we're not talking about you not protecting us or engaging in self-defense. I want to be clear about that. A year ago, I had a chance to talk to some high school students about violence, and it was part of our Week of Nonviolence, which we do in cities around the country. We hope you will stop at the table back there. Good brother Marcus Hughes has some flyers for you on your way out. And our organization includes women and good brothers. But I asked these young high school students, what's all the violence about? Why are you guys so mad? What the heck is going on that you're picking up the guns and you're shooting each other? We were in Pittsburgh and we had this conversation, me and the police chief, 150 high school students. The high school students told me, we're upset because the adults in our lives are stressing us out. Okay? I had to stand back and say, whoa. I wasn't looking for that answer. The young people told us when we get up in the morning to go to school, there's an hour of stress in the household. Brother Kevin, you were lucky your mama had it together. She was beautiful, and I honor her. But the young people told us an hour of stress. Our brothers and sisters are fighting. Mama's yelling at us. We're late. We're just trying to get something to eat and get out, and the first hour is rough. Then we get on the bus. And we got to fight on the bus. Or we're walking down the street and people are messing with us. The girls said the brothers are messing with us. Violence grows out of that. We have to change the culture, people. We have to change our tone of voice, the way we talk to each other, the way we argue, the way we divorce. And that's what the Week of Nonviolence is all about. So in closing, I ask Omega Psi Phi Fraternity, my kings here, Kappa Alpha Psi, the other fraternities, my sisters, join with us in the Week of Nonviolence. We invite you to host your own events for young people and to bring fatherhood to the front of this. I'm going to close by showing you a video. It's 2 minutes. We produce socially responsible films. We have tools for you to use. You're going to see a clip that shows the love between a father and his daughter in this film. And we really have materials for you. We don't care if you have a dinner party with 4 kids at the table, like the brother's aunt did with Kevin. Just do it up close, or you have a room as big as this. Join us with the Week of Nonviolence. Marcus will provide you with material in the back, and let's play the tape. This is from On Second Thought. You can get it free on YouTube and play it for your young folks. We also have another film called Drop. As Brother Crump was saying, our young men in jail, 60% of the black men in jail dropped out of high school, young men. So when they want to put 1 out of 3 of you in jail, you all get that education. This is the truth. Amen. Okay, let's look at the video. Thank you.
Can somebody get those lights back there?
Daddy, it's me, Niecy.
Hey, what's up, babe?
It's my boyfriend, Jamal, Daddy. He messing with me. You told me not let no boy get in my head. He got another woman, Daddy. And she got an 8-month-old by him. Now she taking him to court for child support.
You got a baby on the way, Niecy. You gotta take care of yourself. And honestly, Niecy, you need to be considering taking Jamal for child support too.
I know, Daddy. But I want her gone. And she just want him back. But I'm gonna dare her, Daddy, just like you taught me. Not let nobody punk me.
And if you hurt her, you're going to jail. Wait, baby. Listen. You know I pay child support for you, right?
What?
Yeah, I did. And I still do. It was rough, but you and your sister, y'all are my daughters.
I love you so much, Daddy.
And it's not for you to handle this or, go out and kill anybody. But please promise me you won't do anything stupid. Listen, I love you.
Thank you.
We raised money for that film, and through our partnership, we need more films. But this story about a father and a daughter was based on a true situation in Boston, where two young girls pregnant by the same boy, and one girl kills the other girl. We saw the news story. So this is a true story, but it shows the power of her being able to call her dad. And that's who you all are. She called her king, and he stopped her. So that film is available on YouTube. It's on Second Thought, on with the TND, Thought, and you can see it free, and we invite you to please use it and talk. The best part about that film is the conversation afterwards that you have with the young people. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Myers. We now want to segue into the power and importance of mentoring. And Elmani and Janabu are like two of the national giants and voices around this concept of mentoring our young men. So my question to both of you, when it comes to mentoring, our society talks about how mentoring has become the replacement of fathers. And I've spoken to a lot of moms and a lot of women organizations, even some male organizations, and some of the moms have said, he doesn't need his daddy, I'll just put him in a mentoring program. And so, and a lot of the money in our society is geared towards mentoring, but not fatherhood. So my question to both of you is two. One, does mentoring, which is great and powerful and important, does that replace the critical role and need of a father? Two, the second part of that question is, you heard Brother Crump speak about a lot of the injustices. You heard Dr. Myers talk about a lot of the violences. The effectiveness of mentoring, should it go beyond just guiding a young man academically, intellectually, him fulfilling his dreams, or should mentoring also include the social issues and crises that confronts our young men as well?
Thank you to BD and to Captain Powell. Thank you for saying that about my aunt and my uncle. And Kevin will tell you there were probably hundreds, including myself, that was at that table writing their college applications because of my aunt and because of my uncle. My uncle was a proud member of Alpha Phi Alpha. I want to make sure I acknowledge that. And my aunt was a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta, Sorority Incorporated. So I want to make sure I mention that. In those acknowledgments, I definitely have to acknowledge my mother, who is still an educator of 40 years. My other uncle, Richard Lonnie Williams, who has a street named after him in New York City because he was the executive director of the Boys and Girls Harbor. And my father, who was a 35-year educator and best friends with Amiri Baraka. And I myself am an educator, though I'm the executive director of the Kappa Alpha Psi Foundation and past National Guide Right Chairman for Kappa Alpha Psi. I'm still in the classroom. This is my 20th year as a high school teacher. I want to get directly to the point. Let's be very honest. In no way, shape, or form can mentoring a mentor ever replace a father. I have 2 children. And for all of us, how many parents are here in the room? Parents, raise your hand. Okay. We understand the amount of time that goes in with our children. We understand the amount of time on phone calls. We understand the suddenness that we have to go at a moment's notice to pick them up. We understand and instinctively what we see in our children and the things that we want them to be. We understand the times that we need to give them tough love. We understand the times in which we need to fall back and give them the space to breathe and give them the space to grow. I've been a mentor for 20 plus years as well. What I do with my children, I cannot do with my mentee. That's just the reality. And so we do have to get away from this notion that one is replaceable. It's not. And as a matter of fact, that's detrimental to the child. And to anyone that's running youth-based programs and initiatives, you have to make sure, you got to be very careful that you don't run your program and allow that mindset to come in, because if you do, then what's happening is you will set your mentors up and thus your mentees for failure. Because if you give them the mindset that they are replacing fathers, you are putting undue pressure on those mentors. And then when they face challenges with their mentees, they may feel like a failure. I will tell you what will happen. They will leave, and now the mentee will then again feel rejected, because if they were rejected by their father, and now they've gone unmatched and rejected by their mentor. So we have to be careful, those of us that are leaders of mentoring-based organizations, to make sure that we're educating parents, grandparents, foster parents, that the mentor is not a replacement to the father. That is very critical. And we have to make sure that we're not being supermen or superwomen in terms of our mentorship. Okay? So I want to make sure I make that point. But I want to divvy to the next part, which is you talked about to be the social aspect. Of course, yes. I think mentors have to be having a conversation in regards to what's going on out here. That is absolutely critical. And because that speaks for themselves, I want to actually shift. Real quick question here to all my adults. Because since we are talking about mentoring, and because this is a call to action, and because I'm a teacher, I like to give homework. Raise your hand if you're a college graduate. Okay, raise your hand if you are a donor to your alumni. Okay. Now, I'm not going to have you raise your hand on this part because I don't want to put nobody out in the spot. But to everybody in here, I want you to think about this. How many of you have gone back to your high school or into your community and taken at least one person and wrote their recommendation to your alma mater? Okay, I didn't want the hands up. I mean, that's fine. No, because I didn't want to put nobody on the spot that has not done that, because maybe it's the first time you're thinking that. I'm saying that because I want you to understand you are the door to changing someone's life. And I also want to say the reason why I said about the aspect of being a donor, because once you are a donor, you are a person of influence. When you're a person of influence, recognize that when it comes to admissions, you now have influence to advocate for someone not just being admitted, but of course, in the age of affordability, what the affordability is. And so I'm sorry, I'm going to say to all of us that are college graduates, there is, knowing what we know about our communities, goes to the social aspect, knowing what we know what's going on, it makes no sense that every year, not one of us is being a mentor to at least open the door to someone from our community, someone from our high school alma mater, to get into the university that we are in and have graduated from. So I'm tasking every single adult in here, and I'm looking at all of you, and I'll remember your faces now. I'm teaching 125 kids this year. I remember your faces now, but I'm going to challenge you to do that. So that's number one. The other aspect on mentoring, and this goes to the fraternities and sororities, I'm going to say this. We have to look beyond our letters in two parts. Sigma Beta Club, Omega's Lamplight, Alpha Gens, Delta Gems, Delta Teens, Aka Ivies, the rowers from SG Row, Kappa League. We all want the same goal. But here's the fundamental question that we have to honestly answer. Why in the world are we not sharing services? Why in the world is it that the National Association of College Admissions Counseling is about to do their fall and spring college tours or college fairs? Why are we getting our own buses and expending that money when Sigma Beta Club and Kappa League should be exchanging dollars and saying, let's get a bus together?
That's right.
Okay?
That's right.
And so, Brother Bastos, you know me. Been trying for years, but it is time for us to break down these letters and say, this is what I'm calling for.
Yes.
And you can talk to my grandpa, Mark, and everybody else. I believe that the national youth leader heads of our Divine Nine organizations need to convene to find ways to exchange services and support together. And we need to do that now. And because that now leads to the next part, which I believe, amongst all of our organizations led by Delta Sigma Theta, how many of our K through 16 school systems are led by members of the Divine Nine? How many admissions officers are members of the Divine Nine? How many principals, how many superintendents, how many provosts are Divine Nine? We don't have to wait for Jeff Sessions or Donald Trump or whoever's in that Department of Ed, if that's even existing anymore. We have the ability. You can't tell me Divine Nine principals do not have the ability to change policy when it comes to school discipline in their school. You can't tell me Divine Nine superintendents don't have the ability to change policy as opposed to education, or that admissions officers cannot get together and say, here's how we are going to pipeline more children of color into our universities. Here's how they are going to give them more financial aid to increase affordability. We can do that tomorrow. And then the last part here, I'm going to say to all adults, be a part of your PTA. Because you don't, once again, need to wait for them to change the policies within your school. That's your other call to action. Stop sitting at home. I'm sorry. Become a part of your PTA. Amen. And now, last but not least, all young men, look at me. All young men, look at me. Here's your action item. Number one, you're going to get with your principal or your teacher or your guidance counselor that you know has faith in you. And you're going to do that tomorrow or at the worst on Monday. And here's what you're going to do. You are going to tell them, Mr. or Miss such and such, I need my college plan and my post-college plan. That's what you are going to do. And then after you put that in place, here's the one thing I'm going to leave every single one of you with, and you better stick to it. Do not let anybody ever undermatch you. And what I mean by that is, if you're supposed to be in honors, be in honors. If you're supposed to be in AP, be in AP. If you want to go to Harvard or you want to go to Morehouse on 4-year scholarship, do not. Do not let anyone take that from you. You have that ability. You are not the ones, when I see in here, you are not the ones that's going to jail. You are not the ones that we got to worry about in terms of becoming a gang. Nah, what I see in here, I'm starting to give it for preaching to my kids right here. Because you my students. I don't need to be in the classroom for you to be my students. Because if you my students, I see greatness in all of you. And you know what that means? That means I will come down. I'm going to end on this. So all of you here, because I want y'all, look up here. You young men, look right here. Let it be known, because I'm closing out. I will come down, back down here. And if I find out any of you have stopped believing in yourselves, if I find out that you have given up on yourself, if I find out that, and if I find out that you want to fail yourself, I will take this shoe and I will put it so far up your butt. And if I gotta tell my wife I gotta get a hotel room down here to stay down here until you find your purpose and your greatness, I will do so. And on that, class over.
Thank you, El. I tell you, as his friend, and I will tell you, all three of us, connects. And there's another member of the Divine Nine, our alpha brother, Stephen Powell. We kind of have this camaraderie with us. I get those kind of conversations at 3 o'clock in the morning. But please, I want to bring up another giant in this work, another good friend of mine, Janaba Williams, Phi Beta Sigma, Sigma Beta Club.
So, good afternoon. I know the hour is drawing near, so I do want to just start by just thanking, I applaud the brothers of Omega Psi Phi, your Grand Ambassador Tabidi Boone, for just the work that you guys are doing around the fatherhood and to empower and develop young men. As he said, my name is Janaba Williams. I'm a proud member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. I'm the international director by Sigma Beta Club. So I'm glad that we didn't read the bios, because for me, it's more than just the bio. For me, the only thing I would have liked for it to say is to have my picture and for it to say proud, humble servant. Because that simply defines who I am. And so I'm honored to be here. My brothers who came out here, we actually have our past international president and the executive director of our foundation who's here, Brother Arthur Thomas right here. And this man right here, normally after you become a president, you just ride off into the pastures and kind of point and look around. But this man, he was crazy enough to find something else for him to do. So it's an honor for me just to join forces with him and move the needle for our fraternity in the area of mentoring. So actually, because the time is near, I actually just want you just to do one thing for me, and I'm going to take my seat. I need you to take your cell phones out. I need everybody to take your cell phones out. Okay. Youth, I need you to take your cell phones out. I need you to go to your camera. Go to your cameras, and I want you to take a selfie. I want you to take a picture of yourself. Take a selfie. Because we live in an age and generation with youth and even adults. Through social media, we're taking pictures of ourselves. But the problem that I have, take the selfie. Everybody took it, right? Now I want you to look at that picture. And I got 3 questions for you. Who are you?
That's right. Good question.
And that's a question of identity. Are you who you say you are? Which is a question of authenticity. And the third and final question is, are you all that you ought to be? And a rhetorical question, the answer should just be simply no, because there's always more that we can do. And when Elmani asked us to raise our hand, who's a college graduate, who's went to school, half the room raised their hand. And one of my mentors and friends, one of his famous quotes is that we are the iconic leaders that our community has been waiting for, the curators of the change that we want to see within our community. So when God allows us to take platforms like this and platforms within our daily work, in our jobs, it's not for us just to have the title. It's for us to be able to make partnerships and link and join arms together so we can move the needle and get our communities where we ought to be. Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, our male mentoring program, was founded in 1950 by late international president, brother Dr. Parley L. Moore, and he was then the international director of education. So in 1950, this brother saw fit for us to do what we're doing here in 2017. So there's visionaries within our fraternities, our fraternal organizations throughout the country who already can just look at the facts, look at the data. And in 2017, as educators and other professionals, we're charged to make decisions on data. What does the data say? And so the data says that 67% of youth who commit violent crimes come from fatherless homes. 90% of youth who run away from home or run away come from fatherless homes. 85% of youth with behavioral disorders come from fatherless homes. So when men are not in our rightful place, we give credence, we give permission for everything else to take place that was there. And so I'm happy to say that the Brothers of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, our charge is that we're going to be a brotherhood of conscious men actively serving our community. And I tell you that when men stand up, boys will sit down. And as a group of handheld brothers, it's time for us to take our rightful place in the community as men. And I love the way Armani, framed it, and check our colors at the door. Because it's nothing for me to take this fine blue and white blazer off. You sure? We know we wear it well, but I will take it off for a young man. I will take it off to lock arms with Elmani, Tabidi, and these other brothers who are doing phenomenal work in the area of mentoring and fatherhood. So as a mentor, my job is not to replace. I do not want to replace a father. My job is to go side by side and lock arms, and to assist you in the advancement and enraisement of your young men. The old folks used to tell us that it takes a village to raise a child. And so I'm telling you that we are a part of the village, and there's always more that we can do. So it's an honor and a privilege for me to be here. It's an honor for my fraternity to take its rightful place in the community along with these brothers as we do everything we can to make sure these young men, our motto is that we are creating the next generation of leaders who accept responsibility and love the challenge. And so for us as men, we have to be honest with those selfies, honest about what we see. For us, it's about ownership and accountability. When the father is in his rightful place, I saw Eric Thomas' video last week, and he called the fathers franchise. Franchise, the #1 draft pick. He's the #1 player. When Kobe Bryant played for the Lakers, when the Lakers didn't play well, they didn't ask Ron Artest what's going on. They didn't ask any of the other bench players what's going on. They went to Kobe Bryant. Franchise, where are you? Where you at? And when franchise is in his rightful place, doing what he's supposed to do, the whole team plays better. And when we as fathers, we as mentors, when we're in our rightful place in the community, doing what we're supposed to do, the whole team, the whole community will play better. So I'm charging each and every man, every woman who's educated to go back into our communities and to pay it forward. Carter G. Woodson wrote a book in 1933, one of your brothers. It was called The New Jim Crow. Yes, sir. And he said, he had a profound quote. It was the miseducation of the Negro. I'm thinking about Michelle Alexander. I had her in my notes, but I can't get to it, so thank you. And he said, when you control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his actions. That's right. You do not have to worry about his thoughts. You don't have to tell him to go yonder, go here, go there. He will find his proper place, and he will stay in it. He said, and in fact, if it's not a door, he will cut one out for his own personal business, his benefit. His education makes it necessary. So education is the key. And men being in our rightful place in the community, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, as a practitioner, an educator who's been in this space for over 20 years, raising young men who are not my sons. And I stand here before you as a proud father of 2 young men, a proud husband of 1 wife. Let that sit there. Let that sit there. Because she is here. My lovely wife has joined me today. Miss Williams, wave your hand. You better wave your hand, Miss Williams. So with that, I'm going to take my seat. And again, I just thank you guys. Let's be encouraged. Let's be accountable. Let's take ownership for what we have done and what we have not done, and take advantage of all the resources and opportunities we have before us to make a difference in our community. The Brothers of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated are proud to take our rightful place and to join arms with our brothers of the Divine Nine as we collectively do this together. Thank you.
You did that on purpose to go against L, right? You did that on purpose. Good job. I think the best way we can finish out this forum, and after our vice president of our fraternity speak, we're going to open up about 10, 15 minutes for Q&A, and I would ask your indulgence. It's 4 o'clock. We can stretch it for another 10, 15 minutes max, because we definitely want to hear from you in the audience. But right now, Dr. David Marion is one of our country's esteemed psychologists. He lives this work. And Dr. Marion, out of all you've heard in this conversation, just share with us, how do we keep our minds right?
Amen. Well,
How do we keep our sanity right? When we have boys that are getting younger and younger around the incidence of suicide, mental illness, depression, anxiety, isolation, not knowing if their lives are going to last no more than the age of 15 or 20, with all that stress, and then we still want the best for them. The stress that fathers go through, can't see your children, paying child support, unemployed, can't feel like a man in society based on their responsibilities. All this mental weight that is in our community. If you can just leave us with some analysis, call to action, recommendations, how do we keep our mind right? How do we, not just with father, men, and boys, but all of us as black people, from a psychological, emotional, spiritual standpoint, how do we keep ourselves together?
Thank you, Brother Boone. I was smiling because she's already at the mic, ready to ask a question.
I'm gonna make an assignment.
One of the things that I know over 25 years of counseling individuals and families is that if you are not mentally healthy, you are not healthy.
yes, sir. Say that again, sir.
So,
yes, sir.
and I think that's crucial for you to fully appreciate. If you are not mentally healthy,
Yes, sir.
you are not healthy. And in the work that I do, my expertise is something called cognitive therapy. And in cognitive therapy, my job is to try to change the way you think. If I can change the way you think, I can change the way you feel. If I can change the way you feel, I can change the way you behave.
Yep.
And so with mental illness in our society, which I think is one of the most underestimated in terms of the consequences that it has on individuals and families, we have to understand that, you know, in life you're going to get some curveballs, you're going to get hit in the gut, and you're not going to have the regular emotional responses to things like you think you should. But there is help out there for people, and it's been very fascinating to watch. When I started in 1992, I didn't see black people coming for counseling. The majority of the patients that I had were white women. And that was very fascinating for me because here I am, a big black man in Mississippi. And these white women were coming to me for help. And they would refer everybody they could to me. And I used to wonder why black folks wouldn't come in to just have a conversation, because that's really, anytime you're struggling with someone, what do you seek out to do?
Talk.
You want to talk to them.
Yes, sir.
And we have people in our lives like our minister that we talk to. We have granddaddy and grandmama that we talk to. And so that's all people do with me is talk. And they can find themselves feeling better at the end of just a simple conversation. Now sometimes, just as every part of our body can become sick, so can the brain.
Yes, sir.
And so when the brain gets sick, sometimes talking can be sufficient, but sometimes it cannot. And so when it cannot, sometimes you have to add medication to the regimen or do both, where you're talking and taking medication. But there is no shame in coming to get help.
That's right.
The shame is knowing that you need it and not coming to get it.
Yes, sir.
And so when you have these kinds of statistics where 1 in 5 Americans are battling a mental disorder, when you talk about how this segues into criminal justice, where you have 55% of men that are in state prisons have at least one mental disorder. The number jumps for women. 73% of women in state prisons have one mental disorder. In federal prisons, 44% of men have one mental disorder and 61% of women. Now, you know those numbers increase when it comes to African Americans. who live in this society like we do. When you talk about 65% of those in prison have a substance abuse addiction, then you can really see how if there was some help for these individuals on the front end, and if these individuals were willing to get help, that those numbers would come down in terms of incarceration. Because I've been blessed over the last 25 years to do counseling and have contracts with the Bureau of Prisons, with the United States Probation Office. And so I do a lot of work with African American men who have mental health and substance abuse issues. And you would be amazed at the freedom that they have with me to talk to someone who's not going to judge them, to talk to someone who's not going to tell it. There's a lot of freedom in that. And so just for example, just yesterday, a black man was able to stand in my office and cry and wail because his mother died the day before. He had been incarcerated. He feared she would die before he got out. He thanked God he got out and she was alive, and she died Tuesday morning. She was a diabetic. She had no legs. She was in a wheelchair, and she died in a house fire. A tragic death. And this grown man was able to come in my presence and cry. And then at the end of the session, he said, I need you to do one thing. He said, I just want you to hug me. One man hugging another in a loving manner, and he was able to free himself from some of the pain that he felt. Wow. And so mental illness runs in all of our families, and we know it.
Yes, sir. The
thing, too, with criminal justice is that a lot of us don't know is the moment someone is incarcerated, their Medicaid is cut off.
Wow.
A lot of folks don't know that. If you're incarcerated 30 days, your Medicare is cut off. If you're incarcerated 30 days, your disability is cut off. So then if you are blessed to get out of prison, guess what? You broke, uninsured, and just have nothing, having to try to start over. And imagine how difficult that is and how easy it would be to turn back to a life of crime. And so I think we have to be very serious about this mental health, these mental health issues in our community. The Grand Basilisk 3 years ago was kind enough to let me lead an effort in Omega Psi Phi Fraternity. And it is our signature program. It is called Brother, You're on My Mind. And this program is where we bring experts into our chapters to talk to us first about mental illness, to talk to us first about the signs and symptoms of mental illness, but also to tell us about the resources in our communities of where you can go get help. After we bring it in to us, we then take it out to the community. Imagine this, just visualize this. Omega Psi Phi is advertising and marketing a community event. And the community event is mental health awareness.
Yes.
Imagine the impact that has on the community. Black men doing mental health awareness programs in our communities. Talking to them and bringing experts in to talk about this thing that has such a stigma attached to it. And so the Grand Boss has allowed me to seek to go forward with this, and we were able to get a partnership with the National Institute of Minority Health and Health Disparities. Through the help of Terry Spicer, we've been featured in Essence magazine. And so our fraternity is doing what I do privately. It's making people aware of these kinds of things, reducing that stigma in hopes that we will have the courage to get help. My purpose in getting into this field was if you did have the courage to get help, when you walk through that door, you look and see somebody that look just like you, and maybe then you'd be willing to accept that help. Wow. Thank you very much. Wow.
No, I'm going to stand up. I can stand up. As soon as he comes.
Thank you, Brother Vice Grant. Thank you. So we have our first question.
Let me first tell you that my husband received 2 60-year Omega pins. He's not with us now. My son is an Omega. I'm a Delta Soror, and I'm not here to make comments. I want to ask you all to carry out an assignment when you leave here. I come from North Carolina, Durham. Right now, we've got, in the city of Durham, an Omega man running for mayor. But let me tell you what happened. We got five black folk running for the same position. And you know how many white folk we got in that? One.
Just like Atlanta.
Do you hear what I'm telling you? I got an assignment I want you to carry back. The organization that is supporting that white guy spent $94,000 in 2016. You hear what I said? I got the names and the addresses of 13 black folk, men and women that got paid $5,000 in 2016. Y'all hear me? This is an assignment. I want the Alpha, the Omegas, the Sigmas, the Kappas, the Deltas, the AKs. I want everybody to go back home and create a village of PhDs, no Ds, nothing. Get some real black folk. Everybody's our skin. It's not our kin. You got to find out who they are. Excuse me, I'm wrong to be up here talking. I shouldn't even be taking your time up. Right now, this is a short-term winner. For the next 24 days, started today, in the state of North Carolina, we have what? Early voting. 17 days. Those who are not registered, you can register and vote at the same time. We got only 4 positions where you can go. North Carolina Central's Law School, where Benjamin Crump spoke to us.
Yes, ma'am.
And I was there listening. But in the meantime, we got to come back together, the village of Greeks. No Ds and PhDs and no Ds. But you got to be careful now.
Yes, ma'am. That's right.
Man, white folk are using just the epidermis to put one of us in front. And they aren't working for anybody but themselves.
Right.
Please, can we come together for those 7? Anybody here from North Carolina? We need you. But it's the same thing is happening all over the country.
That's right.
They are finding people who look like us, have no commitment to us.
Amen.
They put them out there, and then they are not the James Browns, and not the Harriet Tubmans, but some of those other Junipers. What none of them. I've got the name mixed up. Thank you for giving me this minute. Please make this assignment to come together. October the 10th is the primary. November the 7th is the election. Thank you. Get the group together. That's the assignment.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you. Thank you. We needed that.
Okay, thank you.
The gentleman, hold on. The gentleman that's in the gray, blaze in the back, you're the last one. Again, it's about 4:15, and we want to honor everybody's time for being here for 2 hours, and so that'll be the last question with the gentleman in the back.
I just wanted to make a brief remark. I'm a proud Omega man, Franklin Malone, the founder of the Commission for Fathers, Men, and Boys. I want to say that legislation is going to make the change that's going to save our young men, fathers, and boys. And I'm looking for the fraternity to join with the new legislation that's coming in D.C. already and in Prince George's County, the Commission for Fathers, Men, and Boys. This simple blueprint to save our young men and fathers can proliferate throughout the nation. I'm looking for the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity, working with Brother Fairchild, working with the Grand, working with the Supreme Council to take this legislation and save our young men, fathers, and boys. It's already written. Judge Arthur Burnett Sr., fraternity, and our organization is looking to partner to proliferate the blueprint for saving our young men and boys. That's all I want to say. But I want to end it by saying, in those days, he will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to the fathers. That's where we are. I appreciate this panel. Thank you very much.
Hold on. Let me say this. We still have panelists here. So if you can quickly set up your question, quickly set it up, and then have your question to the panelists.
My question eventually will be to the educator, the young man over here. I'm a 41-year man, so I know where you're coming from. Also, it is extremely gratifying to see these young men from the community.
That's right.
I did it for a while. Also, yeah. Anyhow, my question to the panel would be, where is the area in which we come in contact with these young men first? Right there, in the school. How many black men do we have as teachers?
Less than 2%.
Less than 2%. Address the issue of why we cannot get more men into education other than the economics. I know it's the main reason, but there are a lot of people who take a second job after they retire the first time and still work. Go ahead.
I'll address that. We have had a stigma. Let me keep this very brief. We have to be honest. We have made teaching an unpopular profession. Yes. We have demonized the teaching profession. We talk about unions, regardless of how you feel with unions. We talk about unions, we talk about teachers never doing anything. So what happens is the following, is that between that and also some of the myth, but some of the realities about pay, then when you have a student that's at a university and they're looking at all this debt that they have to incur, then what ends up happening is that they have to say, okay, well, what are these other careers that are going to pay me more, especially those that are highly talented. And this is the one thing that people miss about education. Educators, as you and I and many other people maybe in this room here, is one of the professions where you have to have highly transferable skills. And so oftentimes an educator is also someone that could potentially be a great accountant, or somebody that could be a great trainer, or somebody that could be a great CEO, so forth and so on. So they have the skill set to go into those areas. And so when you have set up against you, one, it's not popularized as a career starting within our school systems. It's not popularized in the college area. And then when you see the stigma of it publicly, it does turn people off. What has to happen, if you're talking about now solution, here's what has to happen. Colleges and organizations have to become intentional about recruiting students of color from the colleges and universities to enter them into the pipeline. But last but not least, and I'm sorry, we're gonna have to address it, is the lack of protections and the lack of pay that educators get. I'm in New Jersey, and to be honest, thank goodness for that, because my pay is pretty good, but the protections are pretty good. But I know what my colleagues in Georgia are dealing with, in North Carolina, a right-to-work state are dealing with. They don't make it attractive for someone to come into our profession, and we have to address that.
But it was made attractive for you. It was made attractive for me. What brought you into it that you can't get other people? I know, time's up.
What I would suggest you and panelists convene on the side. Definitely.
Yes,
Further conversation.
I will.
Yes,
I will.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Gentlemen, I stand before you as a black man, a former educator, former policeman, and a present father. Let me repeat that. Presently, a father. I want to leave you with some words before I ask my question. Faith, action, trust, humility, enthusiasm, respect. Mix the words up, mix those little words up and spread them out. It spells father. Father. All our programs are wonderful and they're so fantastic because we mentor these young men. We mentor these young men and we're setting them up for success. But what we're forgetting, fathers. Fathers. There's still fathers out there. We need to grab them. We have to educate them. And as that young man said up there, take a shoe and put it so far up their rear that they'll know where we're coming from, because these young men can't go anywhere without fathers. So is there any place that you know of or you can direct me to where we can go and start fatherhood programs where it's an initiative that we educate fathers? Because these young men will be fathers somewhere. But there are present fathers right now that we need to get a hold of. Is there a program set for it?
Let me just say this very quickly. There is a national, this father programs all over the country. I'm not sure where you live.
Los Angeles.
Yeah, there's father programs there. There's a member of our organization, Brother George Taylor, who can work.
Know him well.
Okay, you connect with him in terms of getting father programs, resources there in the LA community. And so we definitely do that to answer that question.
Okay, brother.
And I will give you, go ahead.
Good. I didn't actually do that for me because I'm aware and I'm also involved. I did that for the general audience.
No, I just.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. You understand?
For the audience.
There you go.
You can go to Kenneth Braswell, runs the National Clearinghouse for Fatherhood.
Okay. Thank you, goodbye.
You can, and I'll get the exact information, but I want to be able to give you the information to his organization, and I will pull up the exact website for everybody in the audience. I'll pull it up right now.
I'll see. Thank you.
And also, hold on. Ms. Deborah Frazier, please stand. I got it right here. I didn't know you were sitting there. Ms. Deborah Frazier, CEO of the National Healthy Start Association. She, for the last 25, 30 years, through her organization, runs an initiative that focuses on fathers, men, and boys. So right here, Deborah, I don't know if you can give your website, but she's based here in DC and all over the country, but she's one of the foremost leaders on father programs through her organization. So if you can quickly just give some information to the National Healthy Start Association, which the work that you do on fatherhood for everyone. Hold on, come on up, real quick, come on. Oh, got the mic.
The website is nationalhealthystart.org, and we get fathers, as one of the speakers say, at the most opportune moment when they're pregnant, expecting their first child. So we loop them in during pregnancy at 100 sites around the country, and we do have one in LA. And Tabidi is one of our favorite speakers. nationalhealthystart.org.
Did you get it, sir? Okay.
And our conference is March 25th, 26th here in DC.
Okay. Next question.
Greetings. I want to introduce myself. My name is Denzel Turner, recent graduate of Alcorn State University. And thank you. And I don't have a question, but my statements to the young man before y'all leave out. I just want to challenge all of y'all. Y'all see this panel? We all got a lot of rich advice. So I want to challenge each of y'all while y'all here at this conference. Connect with somebody. We have lawyers here, presidents here. We have engineers. We have people who are doing digital. I see my guy with the camera. There's no reason why you shouldn't connect with the guy who controls the camera in the back to gain network. Your net worth determine your net worth. So I want you to challenge you to get 3 or 4 business cards, follow up with some of these brothers. They're all over the world. My school is Alcorn State. We have no out-of-state tuition. You feel me? The school costs $7,000 to get a great education each semester. I challenge each of y'all to look up schools, go to HBCU, connect with these brothers here, and be great. Have a great day. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Frenchie Davis. I am the director at Mentors, Inc. I'm coming here at 2 purposes. One, to address the fact that I have yet, and I've been to a number of these, here capacity for emotional intelligence and emotional health. And it has to be a cornerstone in all of your efforts. A lot of times we're talking about sexually transmitted diseases, but we forget about emotionally transmitted diseases. So I'm going to need some of that into the cornerstone of how we're addressing our fathers and our sons today, please. So that is the first thing that I have to say. The second thing that I have to say is being a director at Mentors, Inc. Mentors, Inc. is the first mentoring organization of Washington, D.C. We've been here for 30 years. I have less than 20% of black men who are mentoring in my program. So I'm asking you today to call to action. Gentlemen, your presence is needed and warranted. Please speak to me. I should not have, in Chocolate City of all places, less than 20% of my mentors are black men, of all places. I also speak to the fraternities. I am requesting in hopes of partnership where you will deliver to me and continued every year 15 members from your organization to commit to mentoring each year. That is what I'm asking of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Frenchie. It's good to see you. Let me say this. She's right. I don't know how to say this. I've been to all 50 states in this country, every major city, medium-sized city, small towns, backwoods, etc. This question comes up everywhere I go. And, you know, I've had an incredible time here today. I'm glad to be here at CBC, and I love doing these panels. But a lot of us talk, and we amen and all that kind of stuff. But the biggest problem is the commitment of us to show up in our communities. You know, when Brother Elmani was speaking, you know, a few of us, the brothers up here, we show up all over the country, basically, over and over again. There's something wrong with that. And I know we're busy, but I'm like, you know, my God, I run a for-profit. I run a nonprofit organization. I'm married. I take care of my mother who's sickly now. You know, I mentor more young people than I can even count at this point. I don't turn down a single young person. And what I do in my community in Brooklyn, New York, I show up at schools on a regular basis because I heard Elmani very clearly, black men got to show up in these communities. That's the number one thing we got to do. If we come up with any campaign, I would like to call it Show Up for black males all around the country. Just show up. Because brothers ask, well, what can we do? Let's show up on a consistent basis. I did not, except for his uncle, that was the only black male I saw between kindergarten and the 12th grade. Never had a black male teacher, any other kind of black male figure in the school system. Even if you don't want to be a teacher, there's nothing for stopping us from showing up in our communities on a regular basis, just volunteering. Can I come to the school? And we as members of the Divine Nine, every one of us has the word community listed in our organizational purpose. But I'm going to keep it 100 with y'all. A lot of us do not participate in the community. You know what I mean? And so I think she's right. What are we going to do? And she's here in D.C. We talk about the DMV. You got a lot of folks who live in this area. We would be remiss to leave this room and not say, hey, sister, can I have your card, and what can we do locally? Because that's an action step she's challenged us on. It's a basic solution. I think we need to respond to it.
Tabitha, can I need to, I know we're running on time. So to this point, because I was actually, I was at one point the consultant for Big Brothers Big Sisters of America on African American mentoring prior to them getting a national director. I think there's though a question. Number one, I agree with you, and I'm not by all means making any excuses, but I think one of the things that we have to investigate with our mentoring organizations is, are we creating our narrative to attract men of color, black men, properly? Because what I find sometimes, though, is that what we say is, you're a black man, show up. But then this is what was happening in Big Brothers Big Sisters. They would give black men kids who didn't need a mentor, they needed a therapist. And they said, we're going to give you these young men that have all of this weight on the world, regardless of your training or, as you stated, capacity to deal with this type of young man, but you're going to deal with them because you're black. And so what happens is that sometimes black men don't want to feel like they're failures. I want to be clear, I am not disagreeing. We have to show up, but I think we have to begin to also say, how are we doing our outreach to men of color and to black men? And is it the type of outreach
to attract them, to make it say, yes, we want you, and make it say, yes, we want to do that. So I think we have to have that part there as well.
I'd like to add something real quick to this. I think we have to focus on recognition. People are motivated and incentivized when they're recognized. And I think our national organizations, maybe we spend a lot of time recognizing the lofty folks. We've got to spend more time recognizing people that do things, everyday people with everyday kids. Honor them, put them in the publicity, put them in the media, and if we incentivize people, then they'll be excited about it and they'll do it. But it's a lot of hard work, and people say, what do I get out of it? Recognition is one thing that they can get.
That's right.
Thank you. Hold on real quick before we go to the last one. To the gentleman that asked about my friend Kenny Braswell's father organization, which is national, www.fatherhoodincorporated.com.
Good evening, panelists. Want to thank you all for coming out and speaking to us.
Speak a little bit loud.
Excuse me. My name is Marquise Hall. I'm an educator at Richard Wright Public Charter School. I just had a quick question for you all. I wanted to know some of your opinions on our youth joining the police force in our communities. Because of a recent conversation I had with my mother, she suggested that right now probably isn't the best time for us as people to be joining the police force because of the stigma that has been held against them.
I think if a young man has a desire to join the police force, I would encourage it. I mean, our young men need to be employed.
Amen.
In order to be on a police force, clearly you have to have graduated high school, probably have to have some college. And so if you're able to be gainfully employed, then I applaud that. And a part of the problem that we have in our community around policing is that there are not enough minority policemen. And so we don't see, like the gentleman said, he didn't see a reflection of himself from the second grade to 12th grade. So if there's an opportunity for men to be in the community in a positive manner, whether it's a mentor, whether it's an educator, or whether it's just an employer or someone in the community, I would strongly encourage it by all means.
Yeah, briefly, I'll just say this, very briefly. Your young man could be the one that stops the next Tamir Rice or Michael Brown.
That's right.
Leave it at that.
And I strongly support that. I think more men and women need to join law enforcement. We want those agencies to look like our community. And so we have to really kind of build it up and find a way to relate to the police chiefs and all of that. I think it's something we need to encourage, definitely.
As someone who got beat up by the police when I was 15 years old, a 15-year-old youth, sir, you asked the question. As someone who got beat up by the police when I was a 15-year-old youth, here's my response to it. I do think that we need to be in every position, but my question is, what kind of police tactics are they being taught? What are the definitions of manhood? Is it rooted in aggression and violence and ego? Or are they really trying to be a healthy part of the community? Because really what we're ultimately talking about is redefining manhood across the board, because it's toxic manhood that rules this country, and it affects all of us. And that's the issue that I have. And so I don't have a problem with police officers. I have proof of police officers who participate in toxic manhood, toxic masculinity. That's the problem.
Congresswoman Gwen Moore has a bill, I'm sorry, Brother Boone, on de-escalation of violence. To speak to your point, Kevin, it's something everyone should be aware of. Also, as a part of the Week of Nonviolence, October 15th to the 23rd, we're doing a video conference with North Carolina Central University Law School on the issue of de-escalation of violence. It's called Keeping It Cool. And so we invite you all to consider signing up, being a downlink site in your community with your young men and with your older men to talk about this whole issue of de-escalation.
Can we please give our panelists a round of applause? And I thank you for allowing us to go a little over time. But before you leave, I have a quick special presentation. You heard a lot of talk about the Richard Wright Charter School with Dr. Marco Clark. Our grand bosses wants to come and make a presentation. But also I want to mention also our fraternities. Fatherhood website is omegafandm.org. Brother Taylor.
Thank you, Brother Boone, and thank all the panelists for an outstanding job. Each year as we come, Dr. Clark, who is the head of school over the Richard Wright Charter School, does an outstanding job with the young men. We've gone over, had an opportunity to talk with them, and we've been so impressed by what they're doing. So what we want to do is make a presentation to him. We want to give a little token. We have $2,500 we want to contribute to him to be able to help with the school in whatever way he wants to. And then the young men do such an outstanding job, we've given them 10 gift cards. And it's not much, it's just $25 in each card that they can pick up lunch or something with. But those 10 young men who've been outstanding students, who've done the things that we've talked about doing, he'll award them with the cards when he gets back over to campus. So please give him a round of applause. And the other organizations that left before we got that opportunity, we'll get their information and we'll make some gift to them as well. Thank you.
I just want to say one thing. First of all, I want to thank the grand bosses, our great grand bosses, and our awesome fraternity. There's no other fraternity like Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated.
You outnumbered, Kevin.
I really want to thank the grand bosses for taking this time, giving calls out to and really supporting our young men.